3 years of fighting, 100,000 deaths, a country ripped apart in an increasingly bitter conflict. But now finally, maybe, a glimmer of hope. Because for the first time, the Syrian government is sitting at the same table as the opposition. The so-called Geneva II talks. They may not bring an instant end to the war, but they may pave the way to a negotiated political settlement. We'll start with the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. He began proceedings and urged all sides to seize this opportunity to resolve the conflict.
Great challenges lie ahead, but they are not insurmountable. How many more will die in Syria, lose their loved ones, be maimed for life, or lose their homes if this opportunity is lost? There is no alternative to ending the violence and the political solution. That is why we are here. Let us prove to all that the world is able to unite and support the people of Syria as they embark on the path towards a peaceful, democratic, and stable Syria. I appeal to all of you to show greater vision for humanity, as well as leadership with flexibility. Syrians deserve a future of peace, dignity, mutual respect, and freedom of fear.
So that was Ban Ki-moon there talking compromise, basically. But despite those calls, Syria's Foreign Minister Walid Muallim spoke of his government's resolve.
Syria, the independent state, shall do all that is necessary to defend itself as it deems appropriate. And that without listening to all the cries, all the statements and the positions that have been announced by many. Such are pure Syrian decisions. In spite of all that, the Syrian people are steadfast in the face of sanctions against the people, against the bread of the people and the milk of the children. And at the same time, we have seen food and medication factories that have been burned down. We have seen the destruction of railroads and infrastructure and even places of worship.
And then Walid Muallim's speech was countered by the president of the Syrian National Coalition, Ahmed Jarba, who took this opportunity to lay the blame squarely with the Syrian president, saying Bashar al-Assad has to step down for peace to be reached.
The
aim was to keep Bashar on his throne. However, the Syrian people are crying for their martyrs that fell for the sake of the freedom of Syria. In our Syria, we consider that Syrians are all the victims of one man, just to remain on his throne. He forgets that no throne in the world has a value of one single innocent life.
Covering the talks for us in Montreux, James Bayes, our diplomatic editor. Hi, James. And I'll make this phrase again, the talk about mutual consent, which you brought up, and that's a hangover, if you like, from Geneva I. With the way everyone was talking, you just can't see that coming anytime soon.
No, there was no real common ground that you could hear, and actually the vast majority of those two speeches from the two Syrian sides were recounting bleak acts of violence which they say were committed by the other side. They were looking at how grim things were and not really a lot of talk of how possibly you could move forward. On the Syrian side, the Syrian government side, they were making it clear they believe that this is the result of the actions of some other of the nations that are represented here. They said some other nations had blood on their hands, and the Syrian Foreign Minister Walid Muallim, when he spoke, repeatedly used the word terrorism or counter-terrorism. He spoke much longer than he was supposed to, some 34 minutes, and he used the word terrorism or counter-terrorism some 34 times in that speech.
What did you make of the sort of testy nature of things between Ban Ki-moon and Walid Muallim as well, in the sense that there's got to be talks brokered by Lakhdar Brahimi on Friday?
Yeah, well, it was all about procedural matters. Walid Muallim, as I say, went way over how long he was supposed to speak for. Spoke for 34 minutes when he was only supposed to speak for 7. That's what they've given everyone here for their speeches. Ban Ki-moon interrupted him 3 times, and it really was a very hostile exchange. Walid Muallim replying at one point, I have to continue, you are from New York, I am from Syria. And I think that shows that sort of exchange, the difficulty difficulty that is going to be there in these talks. And Lakhdar Brahimi is a man who is a veteran diplomat. He was responsible for peace deals in Lebanon. He was responsible for the deal in Afghanistan after the defeat of the Taliban back in 2001. But I think arguably this is going to be his biggest challenge when he gets these two sides, not here in Montreux, we actually move to Geneva, to the UN headquarters in Geneva, and those face-to-face around the table talks are supposed to start on Friday. But I can tell you already the Syrian opposition side somewhat dismayed by what they've heard from the Syrian government, particularly the insistence that whatever they agree here, the Syrian government has said has to go to a referendum of the Syrian people. Now, what's worth remembering is that Syria, in the long history being run by President Assad and his father, that's 44 years, they've never had a free and fair election in that period.
Thank you so much. James Bays is our diplomatic editor live in Montreux. And we've just also heard the Syrian information minister saying that President Bashar al-Assad won't be stepping down, which of course throws up another brick wall in these negotiations. Well, amongst all the foreign dignitaries at Montreux, there is one notable absentee, that is Iran, a backer of the Assad regime, which was not invited, and then it was, and then that invitation was withdrawn. Iran's president is currently en route to Switzerland. However, he's attending the World Economic Forum in Davos. He has said that these Geneva II talks are doomed to fail.
Considering all signs, I don't have much hope that this meeting can succeed in fighting terrorism, because some countries sponsoring terrorism are taking part. Also, I don't think it will succeed in establishing peace and stability, because the countries that created the instability are taking part. Nevertheless, if the meeting helps the people of the region, the Syrian people, helps freedom, democracy, and stability, we will be glad.